Hello and welcome. You are listening to the Seeds of Triumph podcast. We are all about helping service members navigate through the difficult and challenging experiences that come with serving in the military. Here on Seeds of Triumph, we will discuss the good, the bad, and the ugly, as well as provide several resources, techniques, and coping mechanisms that can be used every day to instill overall toughness, wellness, and resiliency into our military force. Thank you for joining us, and I hope you enjoy what we have to provide. Today's episode is a little bit different than normal. We have with us a special guest, one that I was very excited to speak to, which is the PACFLTCM Master Chief. He is one of the 4 Fleet Master Chiefs in the entire Navy, and he's a Senior Enlisted advisor for the Admiral of the Pacific Fleet. He also has a direct line to the Master Chief Petty Officer of the United States Navy. So talking to Master Chief Tocorzic is a very great opportunity to really find out what conversations are being had at the big Navy level and what is our Senior Enlisted advisor population. What are their thoughts on mental health and what are they doing to tackle this issue of, mental health and resilience, especially as we prepare for upcoming global tensions. And the Navy right now is one of the biggest stakeholders in those rising tensions that are going on in the world right now. So it's imperative that our senior leaders are aware of the mental health care concerns, of the stigmas, and the fact that leadership plays a big role in addressing that care and providing those resources and even acting as resources. So before you listen to this episode, it is an interview with the Pacific Fleet Master Chief, and we talk about leadership and we talk about resiliency and we talk about mental health care resources. And I want you to go into this with the idea that it's not just another, blanket conversation. It's not a rehearsed or scripted conversation. It's not, these vanilla answers. Master Chief Tocorzic provides his genuine insight and his genuine philosophy, as well as his own personal experiences and what got him to be in the position that he is today as a leader in the United States Navy and the advisor to the Admiral of the Pacific Fleet, which covers 60% of the globe. So I hope that this episode, if you are in the United States Navy, gives you hope that there is change coming. The future of our Navy is bright, and I hope that you stick around long enough to see it. And if you don't, at least while you're in, use his words to be better and care for your sailors and be that caring sailor and be that support. Welcome to another episode of the Seeds of Triumph podcast. Today I have Pacific Fleet Master Chief Tocorzic here, and I'm really excited to be sitting here with him as he can provide some really good advice, mentorship, leadership, and just experiences. So without further ado, thanks for being here with me, Fleet Master Chief. If you would just introduce yourself to the audience.
Yeah, thanks, Pastor Brigham. Nice to meet you in person finally. So like you said, I'm Fleet Master Chief Smitty Tocorzic. I came in the Navy in December of '89. I spent the first 15 years of my career as a flight engineer and an aviation structural mechanic on P-3s. I was stationed in Jacksonville, Brunswick, Maine, Hawaii, And then I did a tour as a RDC, and while I was there, I got selected for the command program. And since then, I've been a CMC on John L. Hall, which was a frigate out of Mayport. Then VFA 213 out of Oceana, Carrier Air Wing 1 out of Oceana. And then I was CMC on aircraft carriers Theodore Roosevelt, George Washington. Also spent a little bit of time as CMC on Dwight D. Eisenhower. And then here in the last couple years, I served as the Naval Air Force's Force Master Chief in San Diego, and then I was Mick Pond Smith's EA in Washington D.C., and then got selected to come out here and work for Admiral Paparo as the PAC Fleet Master Chief. So a little long, but it's a little over 3 decades, so it's hard to be brief. Yeah, I come from a small town in north central West Virginia, close to where West Virginia University is located, about an hour or so south of Pittsburgh. Very blue collar coal mining town. Where I didn't realize it growing up there, but that's probably shaped a lot of my thoughts on how I view things today, and a little bit more of hard work doesn't scare me. So yeah, that's kind of me in a nutshell.
All right. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. Just in case anybody doesn't understand the role as the Pacific Fleet Master Chief, what does that position kind of mean to you, or how it's kind of a big deal. So I want you to describe it.
So the Pacific Fleet Master Chief is the Senior Enlisted Advisor to the PAC Fleet Commander, which is 4-star Admiral Sam Paparo, and we're responsible for everything from the West Coast to the border of Pakistan and India, and from the North Pole to the South Pole. Roughly 160,000 sailors, Marines, civilians, about 200 warships, 1,200 aircraft, and everything that makes them move. So we've got a ton of stuff, and I don't know if you watch the news, but the Pacific Fleet and Indo-Pacific in general, we have. It's not abnormal for us to have at least 4 of the 5 threats to the United States operating right here in our backyard every day. So this job keeps us very busy, but it's also, in my opinion, the best enlisted job in the entire Navy.
That's awesome. It's always good to really love what you do. And like you said, 160,000 sailors and Marines, that's a lot. That's a lot of responsibility. So
I think we have 60% of the globe is our AOR.
Oh, wow. And so, as a, CT and somebody that does keep up with the news, very aware of the challenges that we face and that are up and coming. So, it's very hopeful. It gives me a lot of hope to know that, the Navy has a really strong, force behind it, right? And then when it comes to, these challenges and these rising tensions, we have to build up our warfighters and make sure that, we can handle any challenges. So that's another one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on the podcast, just to provide some of your leadership philosophy and your knowledge and your words of encouragement to our Pacific Fleet, as well as the entire Navy, on how we can be tough through these tensions. Yeah. You've been in for 30 years. You're the Pacific Fleet Master Chief now, so you've had a lot of leadership experience. So I really just want to ask, what is your leadership philosophy and your leadership core values?
Yeah, so great question. I think we have obviously our Navy core values, right? And those should be embedded in every single one of us. It's like leadership philosophy to me. I don't know if I've some people will sit down and they'll kind of do their own charter and things like that. And COs are encouraged to do it. I've never sat down and really done that because I guess my philosophy is, I've been doing this for 33 years now, right? And if I had the same mentality that I did in the early 90s that I have today, I probably wouldn't be around here very long, and I surely wouldn't be relevant to leading sailors. So I think really if I think about my values are work hard. If you take care of the Navy will take care of you. I believe in your family should come first. I'm not delusional to the fact that when I retire, there's going to be a whole lot of people calling me and want me to come back. So I try to make my command and the people around me better every single day. Our goal is to be better today than what we were yesterday, and better tomorrow than what we are today. And when it comes, it really boils down to me is like I know as a leader, if I'm going to be effective, then I have to change and adapt with the people that I'm leading. A junior sailor today, a 20-year-old today, thinks, acts, and problem solves a lot differently than what I did at 20 years old. When I first joined the Navy. So if I tried to lead, Airman Tocorzic the same way that I would now lead, Airman Tocorzic in 2023, those are not going to match up, and the results that I'm looking for are not going to happen. So I kind of take pride on adapting to my environment and making sure that my goal is to make the Navy, my command, those around me better. And if you do all three of those, then you will inherently be better and taking care of yourself. So I'm not worried about that side of it.
That's awesome. That is really big, is the ability to adapt. And like you said, times are changing, right? With technology, generation of the sailors now. So as a leader, being able to adapt can, work wonders.
Yeah.
So with that, the other thing I wanted to ask you, I recently went to a leadership course, and I devote a lot of my free time just to study leadership, how to be a better leader, because I really do care about the sailors that I lead and will lead. And so one of the big topics that always comes up is emotional intelligence. And, some research shows that, some of the most successful leaders are high in emotional intelligence. And, what that is the ability to kind of relate, understand, and have empathy with those that you're leading. So would you, say that you have a high level of emotional intelligence, or do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I will tell you that probably 5 years ago, I would have told you that I did not. But when I was stationed in D.C., we got our team together there, and we all did a Hogan assessment. And that Hogan assessment pointed out some things in me that I wasn't aware of myself, but after seeing it and after being debriefed on it, then I became a lot more intelligent to it, right? So, I have a tendency I can be intense. I'm very detail oriented, and what my Hogan told me was like, there's a line item in there. It's called excitability. And I'm like a 95 out of 100, and you think, oh, hey, he scored a 95. That's not necessarily a good thing. But what it really boiled down to was like, when I have a project or I have tasking that I want to get done, I have a way in my head how I see that being accomplished, right? And if it doesn't go that way, then I was very quick to kind of go off the rails. And then my agitation now, especially at this level, that filters in to everybody around me and below me, right? Well, I wasn't aware of it, years ago, but then since I've become aware of it, it's made me a better leader, because now I'm okay with taking a breath there. Like, okay, hey, this didn't go exactly the way, Smitty Tocorzic wanted it, but it's not the end of the world. Let's go ahead and take a deep breath. Let's kind of reset, recycle, and let's get back after it. But I'll tell you, so you talk about adapting, to your environment and being relevant to the people that you lead. That's a no kidding. Emotional intelligence is teaching an old dog new tricks, and I would still have that same mentality, just being like I'm upset because this didn't go the way I thought it should. It's not the end of the world. There's more than one way to skin a cat, and a lot of times, I say that, like, the innovation, the thought processing, and the problem solving of junior sailors today far outsees anything that I had in the early '90s. So you got to be willing to open up your ears and hear what they have to say. And just because it's not my way, I'm okay with it. If it's a faster, more effective way of getting things done, well, by all means, man, take all the credit for it. I don't need credit for anything. So so emotional intelligence, you have to understand yourself if you're going to be an effective leader to those around you.
That's very true, very important. You gotta be good, and you gotta take care of yourself. And some of the things that you said, after reading through, the CNOs get real, get better initiatives. A lot of that is in there when it talks about leadership development. The Navy does want our leaders to be more emotionally intelligent, which means that they want to relate to their sailors and build them up as a team and listen to what they have to say.
Yeah.
So
like I said, that 95 excitability, that's a get better, embracing the red, right? It's not necessarily something you want to hear about yourself, but you have to acknowledge that it's fact, And now how do you compartmentalize that and keep that tendency from affecting those around you?
Part of being a leader and emotional intelligence can also relate with mental health and just the mental health status of the sailors that you're leading. So what do you see as some of the mental health challenges that we face as a Navy, and if not challenges, maybe some barriers that exist?
Yeah, so first, I don't know if the challenges that we face as a Navy, I would say that these are challenges that we're facing not only in the Department of Defense, but as a country, as a nation. And really it's a kind of a supply and demand right now. I mean, we just simply, in the Department of Defense, I don't think that we have the providers required to meet the demand that is, coming at us. From a leadership standpoint, I know that we're trying to tackle this from all different directions. And I would tell you, I'm the very first person to say that I don't think that every sailor issue needs to be solved with a PhD. And what I mean by that is, we have frontline leaders in our LPOs and our chief petty officers that are great resources to our junior sailors. And I want us to get to a point where, me as a chief or me as an LPO, I'm not looking at myself as a resource management tool where, Petty Officer Smith comes to me and they've got a problem and I go, oh yeah, I know where you need to go, and I send you off this, but I want to be the first person. If you're coming to me, you have enough trust and faith in me to help you. I want to be the person to help solve your problem. And if there's something going on that's outside of my my expertise or my training, then that's whenever I go into my knowledge of the system and find the right resource for you. But I think we could leverage our leading petty officers and our chiefs a lot more than what we do. And I'll tell you, I think sometimes people, when sailors come to leadership with with challenges, whether it be struggles with anxiety, depression, or diagnosed mental health issues, leadership, I think that sometimes scares people. You're like, hey, I don't want to be responsible for something. But in the big scope of things, a lot of times a sailor just needs somebody to talk to, somebody that gives a damn and that they can feel, connected to. That would go so far in helping a lot of sailors that are just struggling through kind of a tough spot, right? And what that does in return is it alleviates some of the stress on our clinical physicians to where they can tend to the sailors that truly need some advanced care. So, yeah, this is not a problem that's easily fixed. I know from the Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of the Navy, the Chief of Naval Operations, and every leader, all the way down to the most junior sailor walking out of Chicago on Friday. It affects all of us, and I think all of us own some of it. And we got to be creative on ways that that we solve it. There are way too many, unfortunately, way too many suicides, and I think as a team, there's a lot of value in us focusing on connectedness, a Navy family, those type of things, those caring things where I can take, I got a sailor that comes in here and is just having, a horrible day. I got to be able to, reach back into my father, my father experience, my Navy experience, and I don't have to sit there and be, a mass shooter. I can just be a listening ear and, help this sailor get through what it is. And if it's something, if they say something that scares the hell out of me, or they say something that I know is beyond my capabilities to help them with, then I make sure I get them to the right place. But we got to be willing to sit down and have caring conversations with our people. And that's not, some naysayers are going to say, oh, I just want to give hugs to everybody. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm talking about building a resilient workforce who can have a bad day, and they can get through that bad day, wake up the next morning, go, hey, yesterday was a bad day, today's going to be better, and get right back after it.
Right, and trust that they're going to have that supportive leader.
Yeah.
Trust is a big part of it, right? To be able to go to them, confide in them, to ask for help if they need it. And I think, I'm very active on, Facebook groups and Reddit posts, and a lot of our sailors are a lot of the ones that post on there, right? They tell stories or write posts about maybe a leader that they had that just shunned them off or shooed them away or made them feel like they didn't care. And all that boils down to is that leader being unsupportive. Mm-hmm. So if we can just, like you said, build that connectedness and support each other and use the ownership as, E1 to, an admiral, right? If we all take the ownership and work as a team to fix this challenge, right, that the entire nation has of mental health resources, we can make it better. Yeah. And it all starts with that just care, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think everybody, not everybody, that's a horrible generalization, but like leader in general, right? Leader in general, just by definition, is like, in charge of things, making things happen. But what we sometimes lose sight of is like I'm entrusted to your care. And if you don't trust me as whether it be an LPO or a chief petty officer or just a person in general, when you're struggling with something, I'm going to be the last person you come to. And I may have all the answers to your fears and challenges, right? But if you don't trust me, you're never going to come to me. You're never going to get that. If I'm the person that, I used to say it when I was CMC on the aircraft carrier, sailors would be like, Master Chief, every time I see you in the P-Wave, you always got a smile on your face. And I'm like, they're like, this is a hard job. Like, I have bad days. And I'm like, yeah, I absolutely have bad days. But whenever I do, I don't project those on you. And what I mean by that is, like, I know that when I walk around, somebody's always watching me. And if I'm walking around with, this sourpuss look on my face, like, my life is horrible, who in their right mind would ever aspire to being the Fleet Master Chief of the U.S. Pacific Fleet, right? And I have bad days, but when I do, I got an amazing wife that walks me through there. I got two beautiful daughters that cheer me up with their antics. I think we're human, so we're gonna have bad days, right? But it goes back to that resiliency piece of it. Are you gonna throw the towel in, or are you gonna be like, hey, this is just another challenge in a long line of many before I leave this earth, and tomorrow's gonna be a better day.
Yep. Indeed. And you mentioned resiliency, and that's something that I want to talk about because it is so important, right? When you're resilient, you kind of have the ability to endure tougher situations. And I always like to use the weightlifting analogy of, building calluses on your hands. The more you do it, the stronger the calluses become, and you're not cutting up your hands anymore. Yeah. So we can apply that to just being in the military, being in the Navy, accepting the challenges that come to us. So how would you, or what advice would you give to somebody who wants to enhance their resiliency, and also to the leaders out there to kind of promote and push resiliency initiatives throughout their, divisions, departments, commands?
Yeah. So I think first of all, I think when you get to a point where we separate, a lot of times when we talk about resiliency, the automatic focus goes towards mental health, right? Mental health is a diagnosis. Those are clinical things and completely separate from resiliency in my mind. Resiliency, to me is hey, you're having a hard time with whatever chore it is, right? It's having the wherewithal to ask for help if you need it, which is huge. Then it goes back to that connected thing too. You have to have trust in your leadership or trust in me to come to me, because then I can help you, right? So we have to put down our pride sometimes. That's being resilient. That's me understanding where my limits are, and if I need help from somebody, me going and getting that help. Those are all resiliency things, right? And also too, it's like we're all going to go through challenges, and and some challenges are going to appear a lot larger and indefensible compared to others. That it's being able to sit down, kind of compartmentalize what's going on, and then you can't eat the elephant in one bite. So I say it all the time around here. Like we're chopping wood. You can't just whack the whole forest down in one swing, right? So I'm constantly chopping wood. So when I'm having a bad day, I'm chopping wood. I'm getting through this tree because there's another one right behind it. And to me, that's resiliency. But how you build on that is you have conversations in your work centers, right? You demonstrate it as a leader. If I'm struggling with something, I've got entrusted staff here that I rely on, and I talk to them the exact same way I would talk to my own family or my kids. I think probably age and generational wise, they're probably closer to my kids, but I don't like they know me like the back of their hands. They know me like a family member. So when I'm having a bad day, it's very apparent to them, right? But then it's also they're the ones that I rely on to tell me like, hey, hey Fleet, you kind of look like you're not having a good day. So that then puts me in check where I'm not projecting that on everybody around me. So you have to, if you're going to be resilient, you have got to be able to put your rank and your pride and all this stuff aside every now and then and take, criticism in a positive manner to make yourself better, because then the next time you're faced with that same challenge, you will know that, hey, this is not as bad as what I thought it was, and this is just another pothole that I'm going to drive over, and I'm going to make it better. And by doing that, without you even knowing it, you are training resiliency to all those junior sailors that watch you and look up to you. And when that happens, that's good, because you're making money and not even knowing about it.
That makes a whole lot of sense. And I just went back to another conversation that I had. I just talked to Master Chief Ponciano, right? And he went over the details when he was on the USS Cole during the attack when he was a seaman. And one of the things that he said that he points out was that the Chief's mess was very positive and nobody was crying and, acting how you would assume they would in such a terrible event. And he said he really just, to this day, wondered why, nobody, in the leadership role was acting, I don't want to say crazy, but I'm having a hard time thinking of another word. But the answer that he got was that they had to maintain and set the example that everything was going to be okay, because if they were composed and collected and were able to get the job done, then the junior sailors would follow suit. And he agreed and said, that is one of the biggest things that helped him get through such a tragic event. So yeah. I just wanted to bring up that story to prove your point on, if we just be resilient and set the example and put our pride aside, and show our sailors that they can do it too, then like you said, without effort we'll be able to increase resiliency.
Yeah, I think I think I look at a lot of things, especially in this role, through a kind of side picture of conflict. And if you're you mentioned coal, which made me think of it. I'm on a surface ship that's getting fired at with missiles. At that point, I don't care so much about like what collar device I'm wearing. I'm caring about making sure that my ship's in the fight, my people are safe, those that are injured are getting taken care of, and I don't care if it's an E3, an E4, or a master chief, or a lieutenant, or a lieutenant commander. Like at that point, it's Katie bar the door. Like, we're all in this together, right? So leaders are not just master chiefs or senior officers, right? A leader is the FSA on the mess decks who've been in the Navy for 2 months. Somebody's watching that young man or woman, and he or she may not even know it, but somebody's looking to them to emulate the same way they are, you or I, and it's on us to make sure that we're setting a good example for them.
And you actually brought up a really good point. It's like we have to train how we fight, right? And fight how we train. So, just because we may not be on a warship or we may not be in direct combat, and maybe I'm just sitting behind a desk in an air-conditioned building, that's training, right? We're in the military and we're gearing up for whatever, might come our way. So just like you said, it could be anybody. And when things get tough or something happens, if we train how we fight, then we won't have to worry about anybody being in danger. So yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. And then the next thing really is, you mentioned that one of the resources that we have kind of organically to lean upon is our first line leaders, those deck plate leaders like your LPO and your chief, and maybe even your best friend, whether that be an E3, E4, E5. We do have that as a resource, and it's very important. So What would you say to, the Navy's first line leaders when it comes to supporting sailors? What can they do, or is there any training that they can seek out to be that for their sailors?
Yeah, I think first off, I don't know if they give themselves enough credit, for the impact that they have on those around them, their ability to lead, and their ability to solve some of these problems that are brought to them, right? So first off, I would say, have faith in yourself, and if you're doing things for the right reason, I tell people this all the time. They're like, "Hey, what's the keys to success?" Well, the keys to success is, like, to me, and this has worked for me, is, when I think of something, I go, okay, hey, what's the best, if I have a dilemma, like, hey, what's the best thing for the Navy? A lot of times, at this level now, I see it a little bit more. When I was a second class petty officer, I'd say, hey, what's the best thing for the Navy? That's so far out of my sphere of influence that one was normally NA, right? But like, hey, what's the best thing for the Navy? What's the best thing for my command? Now I'm getting a little bit closer to things I can influence, right? And then I'd ask myself, well, what's the best thing for my shipmates? And now there's definitely things that you can influence, right? And then the fourth thing was like, hey, what's the best thing for me? Typically, if you answered the first three right, you were always taken care of. So that was like one of the things. But you can use that. You can use that method. It's kind of like the 5 whys in Get Real, Get Better, right? But you can use that same method for anything that you have, any dilemma you're working on. Hey, what's the best thing for the Navy? What's the best thing for command? What's the best thing for my shipmates? And then what's the best thing for me? And you'd be surprised at how many times that will answer itself without a whole lot of heartache or pulling from it, right? Training. There's a ton of training out there, but the reality is, like, to me, like, being a leader is anchored on having a genuine care for those people that are around you. I don't say that because, like, people think you're supposed to care for sailors. No, I know plenty of people who can say that they care for sailors, but then don't act in the same. The audio doesn't match the video, right? And I can tell you, like, 15 years ago, I was probably just like that. I was focused on mission. I was focused on outcomes. And now that I've, again, developed my leadership a little bit more, I've had 2 daughters. That's probably influenced the way I look at things now. And I look at it completely different. Like, it's nice, too, that I don't have anything to prove to anybody anymore. So, like, my focus is genuinely on those around me, trying to make them better. And if they got problems, I want to help solve them. I get paid pretty well, to break things and solve problems. And I'm okay with that. I told CNO when Get Real, Get Better come out, I said, I love this. I said, to me, you're asking the Navy to go out, seek problems, bust it up, and find solutions to things. I said, I'm all over that. Now we just need to get faster and get some of these things done, and then get that information out to the fleet, so everybody knows exactly what's taking place to make their lives better.
Yep,
so,
exactly.
Very long way to kind of get around into, like, hey, what do you value in leaders? But, like, I tell people, like, everybody gets hung up. There's an eval sitting on the desk right there, right? But everybody gets hung up in this paper and what these things say. And it's easy to get caught up reading your own press, and your eval says all these things. I want you to, when you read your eval, I want you to look at it and go, hey, is that a genuine article, document that reflects me as a person? And and I've done it too. I've looked at it, I'm like, oh man, look at, you're selected or recommended for this or that, right? Like, look how good I am. But the reality is, like, a leader is caring about your people, being connected to your team, able to build teams, able to get those folks through challenging days with a smile on their face. And no, that's not easy. I mean, I say this all the time too. You want to see an effective leader, right? It's easy to get somebody to follow you out of a burning building. It's hard to get somebody to follow you into one. And if your team's going to follow you into one, then you're doing okay.
And how do you do that, right? Is you just care, have a genuine care. There's no roadmap or SOP, right? Yeah. It all comes to just caring. I think that's a really good point.
Yeah, when I was a drill or RDC, I had an inspection that was going on one time, right? One of the petty officers that was doing the inspection, recruits are always at attention, right? So when they would bend down to check shoelaces and stuff like that, they would look behind them to see if recruits on the other side of the compartment were moving. And after the inspection was done, the petty officers were leaving. I was a senior chief at the time, And she's like, you know what, Senior Chief? She's like, I don't know what you do with your divisions, but like when you call attention on deck, or a 10 hunt, like these sailors, they do not move. Like they will fall over, passed out before they move. And she's like, I'm a firm believer. If you walked out in the night and you told them to tear the chapel down, we'd come in the morning, the chapel would get power on us. And she's like, what's the magic? I said, there is no magic. I said, I'm hard on these sailors. Right? Like I'm hard on them, right? I said, but I also take care of them. And that's not cuddling them or hugging them. That's being real with them. That's knowing if they got challenges, I'm here to help them. And it goes back to that connectedness. If the people around you know that you have their best interest in mind, then they will come to you. And then that's on us as leaders now to have faith in our ability to help them and identify. If we can't, then that's when you get them to some higher trained people.
Yeah, no, that's really good, and that makes a lot of sense. So now we can get into the, seat of triumph segment. And this part is really, the part of the episode where hopefully the listeners can kind of relate to a personal story, a time that you had went through a challenge or an adversity and then overcame it. And so if you want to share, your seat of triumph and kind of how you overcame it.
Yeah. So I gave this some thought. I could probably dig up several, but the one that kind of resonates with me because I think I think a lot of this is like when I was a junior sailor. I'd been in the Navy for maybe 18 months, and my father passed away, and so now I'm 19 years old. I'm away from home for the first time, and your fight or flight instincts kind of kick in, right? Well, my instinct was I need to get out of the Navy. I need to get back home. Looking back on it now, I don't know really why I was thinking that way, but it goes into like me building resiliency over the course. The only thing I could think of was I need to go talk to this chaplain, and I need to get out of the Navy because I need to get back home. And chaplains, they're a great resource, and everybody thinks that they're solely there for religious, spiritual reasons, but they're not. I mean, they're absolute incredible counselors. And I was talking to this priest in Jacksonville, Florida, and he asked me. He said, "So, Airman Tocorzic, so what are you gonna do when you go back to West Virginia?" I said, "Well, I'm gonna get a job." He's like, "Oh, you have to financially support your mom?" And I'm like, "Well, no, she has a job." And he's like, "Okay." He's like, "Well, you have no other family there to take care of her?" And I'm like, "No, I have a brother and sister that still live there." And he said, "Okay." He said, "So you don't need to financially support your mother. You don't need to, you're not the only family member that's there around her. So, what are you going to go do there that you can't do here?" And, I started to think about it. And then, he asked me too. He's like, what brought you into the Navy to begin with? And the reality was, like, I was 18. I was, probably having a little bit more fun than I needed to and making some poor decisions. And, I needed the Navy a lot more than what the Navy needed me. But because I hit this first, challenge in my life, or it probably wasn't the first, but it was the largest one that I had been to at that point, my initial instinct was, I got to get myself out of this situation, and I got to, get back to what's normal to me. And I am so glad that chaplain had that talk with me, because, that was the first, the first layer, that callus you talked about earlier, mm-hmm. right? That's been building over all these years that helped me, deal with adversity, know that no matter how challenging or how bad, the threat is, there's a way to get past that. Right? You just got to take a deep breath. You got to compartmentalize, work your way through it, rely on your friends and your shipmates and your leaders to help you, and it will be all right. I think far too many times we have, unfortunately, folks that will choose a permanent solution to a temporary problem, and I think a lot of those could be salvaged just by somebody having a pardon my language, but a give a shit factor, and just being able to sit down and have an adult conversation with a sailor, and know that, hey, I don't have all the answers in the world. I'm never going to be the smartest guy in the room, and I'm okay with that. But I will give you 100% to whatever you need to help you get past this like rough spot. And then we'll smile and laugh about it later, right? And that chaplain was that first person for me, but it doesn't always have to be a chaplain. It could be a shipmate. It could be somebody at the barracks. It could be somebody junior to you. It doesn't have to be somebody senior. I mean, resources, we get hinged on resources like the chaplains, the DRCs, our physicians, and those are all amazing resources, right? But we have a ton of them too that we don't leverage, and that's, you can be a resource for me, right? I just got to be willing to come to you. Chief Vegas can be a resource for me. The junior sailor walking down the P-way can be a resource for me. And a lot of times they are. I could be having a bad day, and I can run into a junior sailor, go, hey, where are you from? And they just have this energy, right? And whether it's like, oh my God, I'm talking to the fleet master chief, which I don't think that's very cool, but they do. And it's just that energy that comes off of them. If I'm having a bad day, right, that energy just puts that that spark back in you. Like, man, we work for an incredible organization, and I'd be lying if I didn't say we've got small percentages in there, but every place does, right? But I will tell you, if we collectively get stronger as a group, the ones who really care and the ones who really want to get after problems, the folks that just want to sit around and convert oxygen, they're going to have no place to go but to the civilian sector. And like I leverage people that want to make the place better. I get around 60% of the globe, and we have a ton of them out there. I couldn't be more proud of them, and I'm absolutely thankful that chaplain kept me in the Navy, 32 years ago. Wise beyond his years.
That's a really good first kind of big challenge to have. Not that, your father passed, I didn't mean it like that, but you were able to prove to yourself that you could overcome such a big and tragic challenge. And so, setting that tone for yourself is really awesome that you did that. And it's a testament to everybody else, that they can do it too. And every challenge thereafter kind of sets you up for that and building that resiliency.
I think a lot of times, it's like we did a podcast on it, but like it's the easy button. You bam, hit the easy button and get back to what my normal is, right? That's what I knew. That's what I was comfortable. But the reality was that comfortable wasn't good for me. Reality was this challenge in my life and being in the Navy and doing something different, and that's what I needed. But I at that moment I would have never been able to see that without going and talking to somebody, and getting some help. So I would, everybody, we all are going to face challenges. Some of them, different levels of complexity, but ultimately, do not suffer in silence. Man, we've got all these things. It gets back to that resource, man. It could be the airman or seaman that works alongside of you in the shop or in the galley. It could be your chief, your LPO. I mean, I hope to God that we have sailors that are looking at their enlisted leaders and trusting them that they're there to help them through problems, and not judge and be critical about it. Like I'm way past that point in my life. So I mean, it's like we have a ton of resources, and if I could leave you with anything, I would say like not every sailor issue needs to be solved with a PhD. I talk about my very first chief, and 33 years later, I can see his face. ADC Chuck Keller, the guy was my financial specialist, my dating app, my psychologist. Anything that I needed, Chief Chuck Keller could solve that problem. And I want all of our chief petty officers and our LPOs to look at themselves like they're ADC Chuck Keller, because they've got a whole lot of worth, and we're not tapping into just a fraction of what they can do.
If you want to help tackle this, barrier and these challenges, be there for your sailors, right? Be a resource. Know that you're a resource. Have faith in yourself, and let's just work together to kind of change the stigma around leadership and mental health in the Navy. Because I see, after everything that I've been through and everyone that I've talked to, that there's hope and we have a lot of potential and we're getting there. So we just have to be patient. And in the meantime, right, let's just be good people and support each other.
be surprised the outcomes just by being a good person.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you for your time, Master Chief. I really appreciate you talking with me today.
Yeah, thank you. It was a pleasure meeting you.
You too. What a great experience and opportunity to have to talk to, one of the 4 fleet Master Chiefs in the entire Navy. Master Chief Tocorzic, I always have a hard time pronouncing his name. Master Chief Tocorzic shared with us his idea of what an effective leader is. And that is somebody who genuinely cares about the sailor and about that sailor's well-being and pushing them and empowering them to be the best person that they can. Because ultimately, if our sailors aren't healthy and our sailors aren't motivated and our sailors don't trust their leaders, then they can't be effective. And the key and the code to being a great leader starts with just being a good person and treating your sailors and everybody else around you as if you would your own family. So I encourage you all, as you go forward in your careers, whether you're in the military or not, is just to be a good, kind, and caring person. Because with that, you can do so much and bring so much great and positivity into this world. Those that are in a leadership position, be a resource to your sailors. Master Chief is right. There is a severe supply and demand in the entire country right now. Our mental health care demand is outweighing the supply, and sometimes we don't need a PhD. We can prevent our sailors from having to seek out those clinical resources, those people with the PhDs, by just treating them well and not being the cause of those traumas. And as a first class petty officer or a chief petty officer, and just anyone in a leadership position, whether you're in the Navy or not, be that first line resource to your sailors. Be that financial specialist, be the dating app, be the anything that your sailor needs. Be that ear for them. Share with them your experiences, your advice, and show them that you care and build that trust and connectedness. Because when we all connected and we have that camaraderie and that support, that's what's gonna pull us over the edge. That's what's gonna help us win this fight. So I just want everybody to remember that the key to tackling this problem can be just as simple as being a good, genuine, caring person. Thank you all for tuning in to another episode of the Seeds of Triumph podcast. I'm so excited about where this podcast is going. And I just really appreciate your support for listening and all the support in general. This has been really great, and I hope you are taking away something from these episodes and using it to promote mental health care resources, to break down the stigma, and to just improve yourself overall. I know that throughout doing this, I have learned so much and am growing into an even better person. Speaking with all these different people, with all these different experiences and background has been so rewarding. So I just thank you all again for listening and for your support, and stay tuned for another episode next Friday.
The views expressed by the speaker and all guests are not those of the Department of Defense, United States Navy, or any other government agency. They are strictly those of the speakers who do not speak for any other organization or entity. The speakers are not mental health professionals and do not intend any of the content of this podcast as mental health advice. If you need professional mental health advice, please seek out your closest military or civilian mental health providers immediately.